guys, we have questions that we're going to go through. We have a Q&A session, and so
a lot of nudity the first 7 minutes.
Of course, like I said.
Hey, just so we can please you.
At least we weren't naked.
Actually, I've got my layer of wool on here. Since I do have a rocket mass heater, it's plenty warm in here, and I got sun coming in my south-facing window, warming up this room. Awesome. And it's a very cold day here in Montana, and yet we got no fire burning, but it's plenty warm in here.
Oh
there,
yeah, you too.
Questions. I did quickie answers.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think some of those we can expand on a bit.
Yeah, and those are private, so people don't know what those questions were if you want to talk about it. Let's just start with that. Looks like almost everybody's filled out the poll. But go ahead, and if you want to just talk about those questions you were just answering in private chat, go ahead and do that.
Okay, so somebody mentioned something about external air intake. And the idea of an external air intake is great if the way that you want to heat your home is with convective heat, where you heat the air. But we've got a system. So if you watch the 4 DVD set, I actually go into a lot of detail about this because we have an experimental system that we set up. We talk about it in DVD 2. And one of the options that were added to it, and I saw that Ernie and Erica documented this in their book, was an external air intake. And so I found that, so I had this option to use this external air intake as much as I wanted to. And in the end, it was kind of like, I don't want to. It's the thing is that we don't burn a fire very often. And then the one thing is that if you have the interior air intake, it kind of sucks the stale, stagnant air out of the room and takes it outside. So all your old BO and farts and whatever else all gets sucked outside. And then the air inside is nice and fresh and lovely. And then you've got this mass heating you and heating the air and heating everything from there with all this lovely fresh air, and it's nice. The thing that, the reason why people want to use external air intakes is the idea that you're going to burn cold air instead of burning the already warm air in the house. And so there's a couple of issues with that. One is that you want to try to get things inside your rocket mass heater to be as hot as you can. Better to start with the warmer air than the colder air. So, that's going to help you get it to be warmer faster and to have a more efficient burn and a cleaner burn. The other thing is that with a rocket mass heater, we're doing a lot with radiant heat, and where we heat things in the room, and then those things then radiate heat back out to us, as well as using some convective heat, especially as the mass later heats and stuff. So I just kind of feel like for a lot of my aspect on permaculture, a lot of people are like, I'm going to save the world by sacrificing something. Like vegans, I think that they're doing a lot. They believe that they're doing a lot. And they're going to sacrifice bacon for a better world for everybody. And I think that's a very noble path. I prefer to try to explore the parts of permaculture that are going to be like, how can we make the world a better place while simultaneously having a more luxuriant life? And from the aspect or the angle of having a more luxuriant life, I liked using the air from inside better than from outside. And I felt that I wasn't gaining anything pulling it from outside. I mean, technically, I know mathematically I was gaining something, but I prefer this other way. And if it cost me an extra stick of wood, I'm okay with it. I don't think it did, though. In the end, I think it's going to be a bit of a wash. And I like the idea of the better air exchange. Huh? Is that a good answer? Huh?
Good answer. All right. For those that joined in late, the Q&A button is where you want to ask questions. We got 15 questions to go through right now. But if we get through all those, go ahead and ask now and add them to the Q&A, and we'll go through those. So, Paul, do you want – I think it works best if I just read these questions instead of picking the person out and promoting them so they can video question ask stuff. Maybe on the show we'll do a live kind of Q&A like that. But I'm going to go through the questions.
All right.
So first question comes from Mitchell, Mitchell Cutler. And Mitchell asks, can you do a short out for, a shout out for Marjorie at the Grow Network for her Mother Earth Online Summit coming up on the 31st? What's that all about?
Oh, okay. So I've put together, I spent like a day and a half, 2 days putting together a presentation for Marjorie, and she had a very specific format. So of the presentation I just gave, I stole some of the things I put together for Marjorie and put them into here. And I think the thing I did for Marjorie is 35 minutes long, but I did an exact script. And I know that there's more information in Marjorie's thing that I did for her. So Marjorie's got an event coming up. I think it's at the end of this month, where it's a free thing, and she's going to have like 45 different people. I know Joel Salatin's one, and I think Justin Rhodes is another one. He's been doing a lot with permaculture chickens, and so it's going to be a mega webinar-y kind of a thing.
Awesome.
Does that help paint a picture?
Yeah. Where? What's the website for that?
That's a great question. I always just search for Marjorie Wildcraft, and then I get to her stuff, and there's a link.
It's homegrownfoodsummit.com. Or if you go to marjoriewildcraft.com, it redirects you to homegrownfoodsummit.com. All right.
Next question, please.
Next question. Can you make a Rocket Maths pizza oven? From Mitchell.
I'm going to say yes, because we've got, during the Innovators event, so the DVD 4 of the new set is from the 2015 Innovators event, and as part of that, Tim Barker built a 3-in-1 thing that it was a rocket griddle, oven, and water heater. And we have used that to make mini pizzas. And so we've had a lot of pizzas out of that. So that's a rocket oven for pizzas.
Wow,
much cleaner, much less fuel than using like a cob oven.
And you could probably get away with that from the legal standpoint if you said it's pizza oven, right?
Well, if it's outdoors, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, entirely easy peasy, get away with it. I think another thing is that for a conventional cob oven, now there's also the double chamber cob oven, which Ernie has made. I got a video of him making it, or a video of him using it, and he's got plans for it available. But with a conventional cob oven, they put out a lot of smoke, just pouring the smoke out. So I would think that if you're going to do that, then you might get neighbors maybe calling the fire department, if not the Department of Making You Sad, to say, they're making smoke, man. And so with the double chamber cob oven, or with the, any of the rocket stuff, there's like really no smoke. So I think there's a great story from Ernie and Erica. They had a neighbor who I refer to as Mrs. Kravitz. And I think only a few people watching now probably know the reference. So it's a very old television show. Had a woman living across the street who was always peeking out the curtains and spying, and then would report anything. So Ernie, bewitched. That's exactly it. So there's so Ernie and Erica built a rocket mass heater, and they had a Mrs. Kravitz across the street who was always complaining about everything and always, calling the Department of Making You Sad. but she never once called about the rocket mass heater because she never saw any smoke. And so she never saw anything to report. So in fact, I think, my understanding is, and I heard a rumor once, and this could be crazy, that there was this herb that was against the law. I think it's called marijuana. And people would still partake of this herb, even though it was against the law. And I don't know why. It's against the law. And now they had their reasons, whatever they were. I'm sure they were noble reasons. And now we've got something where it's like, this can save you a couple $1,000s a year by using this heat. And it's got this lower carbon footprint that, might be the equivalent of parking 7 cars. So there's a lot of people that are like, I'd rather put that $1,500 into pizzas than give it to the power company. And other people that have the noble goal of less carbon in the atmosphere and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's reasons. People have their reasons. And so I've heard a rumor that there are some people, because of reasons, that they've decided to take the risk. And that actually, if they get busted, they believe that what could happen is of less risk than that marijuana thing.
I got to say, it's a good thing that rocket mass heaters are not in competition with the pharmaceutical industry. There's no lobbying against it.
Right. It's only in competition with big oil.
Yeah.
Big energy. That's all. Nothing to see here. Move along.
All right, next question is from Mike Cooley. Mike asks, could you please expand on the comment you made about no metal in the riser?
Yeah, don't do that. I'm glad we had this chat. All right. So, we're shooting for temperatures of beyond 3,000 degrees. That's what we want. And we're seeing those temperatures now. It's only been in the last 4 years that we've been seeing these temperatures of over 3,000 degrees. Steel, like metal, any metal, you pick your favorite metal, put that inside of there, it melts, it turns to liquid at 2,600 degrees. So I think that's kind of the end of the story, right? It's going to not stay put.
Yeah, building a forge.
So don't do that. Don't put that there. Yeah. Oh. Metal on the outside of the riser is fine, because once the heat comes up the middle of the riser and hits the top of the barrel, it cools really fast, which is where it's giving off heat on the outside of the barrel, passes right through the barrel. So it's like outside of the riser, metal is fine, no problem.
So is that why we see on those pictures the barrel isn't completely covered in cob? The top half is always uncovered?
You need it to cool. So you want to not cover it with cob. Basically, it's the secondary thermosiphon is when you've got this large warm air at the top and you get this smaller, cooler air at the bottom. It's forcing it down. So the riser forced the air up as it was getting hotter, and then the barrel is kind of sucking and pushing down, and so it's this is a double pump thermosiphon.
So when they're building these, they got the barrel, are most of them just completely uncovered at first, and then you kind of test it to see how it works, and maybe cover more and more of it as you test to see what's more efficient?
I would cover as little of the barrel as possible.
Okay.
There have been systems that I've seen where they've extended the height of the barrel, and then they had pretty much no heat at all going into the bench, which is, I think that for a wood shop that you only used on weekends, that might not be a bad way to go.
Right.
Because what's the point of heating it on Monday and Tuesday when you're not there? Better to just put the heat right into the room right away.
Yeah.
But usually the barrel is, the designs, because you need the riser to be almost exactly 48 inches tall. And so then the barrel's already kind of up a ways in order to bring the exhaust gases back down. And so no, just to have the cob right where you seal the barrel turns out to be just about right. But I've seen people where they've like done things to attach two barrels and have something taller. So like down in our shop with the batch box system, we've got an extra barrel extending the first barrel because we want to get as much heat out of the system as we can, and we don't care about what goes into the bench.
Okay. All right. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Next question from Brian Wood. Brian asks, what the heck is punky wood? What are you talking about? Is that non-aged, full of sap wood, or what?
I'm talking about your mother, Mr. Wood. And so, I don't know your mom. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. Punky wood is going to be wood that's kind of rotten. It's like you could rip it apart with your hands. It's very lightweight. It burns really fast. It's almost like paper, but it doesn't have a lot of BTUs in it. Punky, old. You could stick your fingers into it. Smash!
All right.
Did I answer your question?
That answers it. Next question's from Jamie Black. Jamie says, I live in an area with a lot of pine. Traditional wood burning stoves are a headache because of all the soot burning and collecting in the chimney. Is this an issue with a rocket stove?
Okay, run the question by me one more time.
I live in an area with a lot of pine.
Okay.
Traditional wood burning stoves were a headache because of all the soot that's been burning and collecting in the chimney. Is this an issue that Rocket Mess has?
We still have soot because, like here where I'm at, we're using conifer wood also. And there's still soot. We don't have any creosote. We do still have ash. We have virtually no smoke, but there is still soot. We have but it's like, I don't know. I open up a system and I'll see soot in it, but I've never seen enough soot to be like, and I better clean that out. I cleaned out ash, but I haven't ever needed to clean out soot. But it is there. I do see it inside the systems. So there have been some things that have either, I'm not sure if I could say that it burned off the soot, but it's like with a lot of the glass systems, they're trying to get the fire to hit the glass in just the right way to keep the soot off. I'm not sure whether it's fair to say that it burned the soot off or just kind of brushed the soot off and carried it further down the system.
Yeah.
So so she's saying that soot is a headache. I haven't experienced this headache she speaks of.
It's not a big deal.
I haven't had it be a big deal.
Have you had a big deal in wood stoves? Traditional wood stoves?
I'd have to say that when I ran wood stoves, I tried very hard to burn an extremely hot fire every fire to reduce creosote because I don't want a chimney fire, and I worry that I'm not burning it hot enough when I'm running a conventional wood stove. So I'm doing all kinds of things to just really get it super, 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 super hot. Maybe that solved whatever soot problem I might have, but I never had a chimney fire. I've heard of people who have had chimney fires and have lost their homes and some family members to chimney fires.
Yeah, me too. That's tragic. Real tragic stories. Well, moving on to happier things. Okay. Martin Snow has a question, and you kind of went over this, but maybe you could elaborate a little. He's coming from Arizona desert, where winters go from 85 degrees in the day to 15 or 20 at night. Has anyone thought of a good way to use the mass to channel cool air when the burner is dormant for a while?
Huh.
Thought of a good way to use the mass to channel cool air when the burner is dormant for a while. So I guess that's.
I haven't heard of anybody doing it, but it does seem like if you wanted to, which I don't think this would be worth the effort, but it's like, okay, well, what if you, like it had something so it would come on at 4 a.m. and then start sucking the cold air through the system, like you had a fan in there. So it moves cold air through the system, and then it turns itself off at 7 a.m. So now the mass should be extra chilled with your more chilled night air. I haven't heard of anybody doing that, but I suppose it's possible.
It does make sense in the desert. I mean, that would make sense to do something like that. Absolutely. But in the, well, yeah, I would go with that. Yeah, it makes sense. I haven't seen a lot of rocket mass projects in the desert myself. Have you?
I was just down in Santa Fe, and it sounds like their weather is a lot like the weather we have here.
They're pretty high altitude.
Yeah, because they're like at 7,000 some odd feet. And I gave a presentation there, and I mentioned rocket mass heaters, and there was people in the audience, yeah, rocket mass heater, I have one. So, yeah, I think that a rocket mass heater seems like a smart thing in Santa Fe.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of high desert areas. You look at Nevada's pretty high desert area, or parts of Nevada. Washington State has some high desert area. Anyway, next, let's move on to the next question, and that's from Kevin. Can't pronounce your last name. Kevin asks, are you going to do a video on a Tim Baker style rocket stove water heater?
Like the one that's in DVD 4 right now? So Tim Barker, I think is who he's talking about. And Tim Barker is amazing. He was here and taught an appropriate technology course this summer. And then he was here for the Innovators event, the two Innovators events we've had here. And for the first one, he built that 3-in-1 I just talked about. And for the second one, he basically built the exact same 3-in-1, but greater, grander, better. He just is bonkers about this 3-in-1 thing. And we got video of the 2015 Innovators event, and I heard from the videographer that he is going to put together a DVD for that. And maybe he'll put together, that same videographer was here to record record Tim's course that he taught here for the appropriate technology event.
And I imagine you'd be wanting to set that up with like a multi-season system, so that like during the summers you'd be heating it with black hoses on the roof, so you're not having to run a fire in your house. And then during the winters you'd be using the rocket mass for the water.
Well, the things that Tim built are portable.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you can have them be in your outdoor kitchen when it's hot. Now, of course, Tim is from Australia, where it's hotter than here. And I don't think he even has this concept of freezing. I'm not sure if he's even seen snow ever. So I think that a lot of his designs are about how to keep the interior of the house cool, but still cook outdoors.
Okay. All right. Cool. And you said they're lighter. I'm thinking about doing one in an RV. I know Cobb's heavy. If I want to do this thing in an RV, what do I do? Don't do it.
Well, I mean, the stuff that Tim's put together, I think would be pretty light. But then if you're doing it in an RV, in fact, Erica was here for the appropriate technology event, and Tim taught her how to weld. And so then she came up with something that was part steel, part masonry, that was for a boat to go onto a small boat. And we're seeing a lot of our innovators are now moving strong and fast into the area of like an indoor rocket cook stove. And so, but the thing that Erica did was indoor rocket cook stove that was pretty small. So you'd have a small cooking surface and a small fire. It was basically a 4-inch system. We're also seeing a lot of people do rocket mass heater stuff for tiny houses. And we're seeing some very interesting results. There, for the longest time, Ianto's group would say you cannot build a 4-inch system. And that had to do with the fact that they tried and they had a collection of failures. But things have progressed so much in the last 4 years that we're now seeing some great results with 4-inch systems.
Yeah, there's a lot of hunters, especially in our area, that have like truck campers, and they put wood stoves into them to heat up the truck camper during the winter when they're winter hunting. And man, it'd be great to have a rocket mass in those if it's possible, especially if it's heating up the bed or the bench, because there's a lot of air flowing underneath your camper.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking is, like, you don't want to have too much mass, because then it might become difficult to get around with a lot of weight in the back of your truck in addition to that camper. But I think another thing is that if you got a conventional wood stove for wood heat in your camper, what are the game going to do when they catch a whiff of smoke? Are they going to come closer, or are they going to, go farther away?
Well, normally these are on the, they're going to go further away. But normally these are, you got your campsite where you're going to be cooking fires and stuff anyway. And then you're hiking like 12 miles into the mountains to do that.
And so then I would think that if your mission is to hunt as opposed to hunt, then I would think that you're going to, it's like you got to get up there, you got to get your meat and get out. Then I would think you're not going to do an open campfire. And you don't want to do a conventional wood stove. But I think that, a rocket mass heater or something that uses a proper J-tube or something in that space, I think that's going to be a smart thing, because then you're not giving off smoke.
Yeah, it could be a game changer for hunters because they're not having to hike so far away from their campsite.
In order to get the game. Yeah. Instead, they could put out stinkums that draw the deer in so they can, hunt from the picnic table.
All right, we still got 22 questions. I don't know if we'll get to them all, but let's blast through them. You're going to love the next one from Brian Wood. Are the DVDs available on Amazon to order?
No.
All right. Next question.
Stoves2.com. I've got it all set up so it's all there at stoves2.com. But it's kind of like I'm tired of dealing with Amazon. Not only does Amazon take a fat cut, but it's like they keep changing stuff, and suddenly, your listing doesn't work anymore. And anyway, so I'm just tired of dealing with Amazon. I exchanged some emails with a guy that I hoped was going to carry them on Amazon, and I'd like sell them to him by the case, and he would sell them on Amazon. But I need to talk to him some more, or maybe somebody else listening now is like, they want to sell them on Amazon, and they should send me an email.
All right, awesome. Next question is from John Wagner. And did you install a rocket mass heater in your double wide? Answer is yes. If so, how did you support the floor? Did you replace the particle board decking?
We did. So we supported the floor by putting in some cement blocks on the ground underneath, and then coming up with a piece of wood that was just the right height to support the structure that's underneath the double wide. And then we used a pebble style rocket mass heater inside the double wide, and it's got a wood floor in it, and then it sits on rails which are running perpendicular to the support system that's underneath the house.
All right. Next question is from Tim Mather. Sorry, Tim. Question is, you mentioned a special way to start the stove. Do you have information regarding this, and how is it different from a regular fire?
We do have a 30-minute microdoc called Care and Feeding of a Rocket Mass Heater. I think we've got it available at Shippable for like $3. and it's got video clips of me starting a rocket mass heater, and all the tips about caring for it and stuff like that. Then there's Ernie doing it and Peter Vandenberg doing it, and then there's one where I think it's Emily and Tony doing it. And so you've got 4 different people starting rocket mass heaters to get 4 different perspectives. And the way that I do it is different from the way that any of those other people do it. Part of it is that I think I'm lazier than those guys. Like Ernie will take a stick and whittle up kindling like toothpick-sized stuff, and we give him shit about it constantly. But that's the way he likes to do it. I will go to the wood pile and I'll gather up the smallest pieces I can find, which are usually like that thick. So it's bigger than kindling, a lot bigger than kindling. And then we save all of our burnables. Like like a lot of households will have recycling, and so we'll have the recycling bins, and then we've got this one goes to the dump, and then we got this one's for fire starter, and it's like the best thing to put in there is one of those butter wrappers. Those are awesome. And so anyway, then the time comes like, oh, I'm going to start a fire. Well, first of all, you don't start a fire very often with a rocket mass heater. So these bags of burnables build up. And so then I just put a ton of this down. Well, not a ton. I put a lot down in there. And you got to put it back. You got to kind of fill the bottom of the burn tunnel. So to get it under the riser, because you need to prime the riser and you get the riser warmed up. And so I'll put all this paper stuff, much more than Ernie and Erica, much more than anybody else I've seen. And then I've got a propane torch where you just click the little trigger and it starts. And then you can turn it upside down. So I turn it upside down and I put the flame down into the burn tunnel. And I ignite the paper that's down there a ways. And then I pull that out and turn it off and put it away. And then I plop all the sticks in there. That's what I do. That's it. It works almost every time. And I don't have to make kindling because I'm lazy.
Yeah, I noticed in some of the designs they have the input shaft at the bottom and some don't. And so the ones that don't, or I don't see them like right in front, so maybe it's somewhere else. But the ones that don't, I imagine they're lighting it from the top down, like with one of those longer lighters, or the ones that do are lighting it from the bottom.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I can tell you that, Ernie is on pain meds, and so he tends to get a ball, and then he'll light the ball, and then the ball's on fire, and then I think about the time that he starts to smell burning flesh, then he kind of does this bowling thing. There you go! And he throws it in there and hopes to get under the riser. And then he starts putting more paper in, and then he puts in the newspaper. Okay. That seems to be Ernie's technique. Erica will take a bunch of paper and she'll wad it up into something that's kind of like a long thing, and then she lights one end of it, and then she'll delicately shove it inside and then put in more paper and then put in the kindling. I'm not sure if this answers your question or not.
Yep.
I don't like the idea of having the flaming thing outside where it could put smoke into the air. I don't like the idea of the smoke being out here. I want it all to be down in there and going up the exhaust, So I like, and plus my little propane torch thing is kind of fun. I just like playing with it. It's cool.
What I'm talking about, all right, I'm not a rocket mass nerd. I don't know any of this stuff. So where you put the wood in from the top, okay, there's also a hole on the bottom on some of these that I see. So that's for airflow, I'm assuming, or somewhere where you can light everything, and then you're putting your stuff in from the top.
I saw a picture one time of like a drawing where there's the wood feed, and then from the outside there's like something coming at the bottom of the wood feed from the outside, and I'm thinking like, that's not a good thing.
Okay, that's my question then. That was my question, is why the heck is that thing there?
Yeah, you'd have to ask them, and I wonder if they actually built it, and then And then later they were like, we got to plug that thing up. That's ruining everything.
All right, fair enough. Next question is from John. John asks, have you ever, okay, first of all, this question, there's a couple of questions like this, so I'm going to just ask it with John's question, guys. But it's looking for alternative ideas for RMH. Have you ever installed other systems into a RMH, aka water lines, to heat showers, or in floor heating, or in saunas, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay. Water heat. We've got in the first 4 DVDs, we had the DVD number 3 is called Boom Squish. And that's about water heat. And basically, if you're working with pressurized hot water, that can be very explodey and dangerous. And so when building a standard rocket mass heater, the odds that you're going to hurt yourself are about 0. So close to 0, might as well call it 0. If you're working with pressurized hot water, the odds of you hurting yourself are probably about 80% of like serious blood. That's why we call it boom squish. But we do have a system here. And the key is if you're going to play with hot water, I mean, there's things to be aware of. And that's why we have an entire DVD to the topic. But if you can do a system that's not pressurized, that solves like 90% of the problems. And we do have a system here that is a non-pressurized hot water system, a rocket hot water system. And that was, by Tim Barker. Tim Barker made it. Okay, so that was one of them, was hot water. We do have an image that we use a lot at Permies, where somebody put a coil of copper pipe around the outside of a barrel, and it was a non-pressurized system. And moving, you also mentioned about heating the floor, and I think that they were talking about heating water, which would heat the floor, and that's a possibility. And then there's some of the stuff was done in DVD, the first 4 DVD, but I'd say that another one would be like,
all right,
if in and out throughout a fire on one end, which go under the floor, and you didn't have to have any water. So there are rocket mass heater systems where instead of heating a bench, that they do heat the floor. I have one video up on YouTube about that. Did I everything? Did I leave?
Well, you just broke up a whole bunch. So my question is for you guys. Was it breaking up for you, or was that just my connection? I see John saying it was breaking up pretty bad for him. So maybe someone else is on your internet, Paul.
Oh, those bastards. I had to go slap them around a little bit. Still breaking up?
No, it sounds okay now. So we'll
Okay.
give it a couple more questions and see how it goes.
All right. There's a bunch. I'm getting a lot of messages now. Yes, very broken up, not bad now. Okay, it's okay now. Do I say all that again?
Do a quick summary of it.
Okay. We have a lot of stuff about hot water in DVD 3 of the first 4 DVDs. And so that one is called Wood Burning Stoves 2.0, is that 4 DVD set. And the 3rd DVD is called Boom Squish. It's about heating hot water with rocket stuff. And it's just dangerous. Working with rocket mass heaters in general, you probably aren't going to hurt yourself. But hot water, especially pressurized hot water, 80% chance that you're going to seriously hurt yourself. So we really, really discourage you from doing it without really doing your research. Then I got into the thing about if you want to heat your floor, I have a YouTube video about doing that. And that is something that's pretty easy to do, but it's don't heat water and then use the water to heat the floor. Use the exhaust. Instead of heating a bench, heat the floor. Simple.
All right. So don't do pressurized. That's just kind of the basic recommendation, unless you really know what you're doing.
And a lot of people think they know what they're doing, and then they're not alive anymore.
Well, that's Darwinism. All right.
Yeah.
Next question's from Alessandro. Says, hello from Barcelona. I got in a bit late to the presentation and don't know if you mentioned what a batch box is, but I just saw the 2 pictures, but I don't quite understand what it is.
So the idea of the batch box is that the riser's kind of done a different way. It's kind of got this channel that you go through at the back, and then all the smoke and other gases go in between this narrow channel and then up into the riser. And then the batch box has got a great big container. I'm trying to fit into the big container where you can stack in a bunch of wood like you would a conventional wood stove. And then you burn more wood at once than you would with like a conventional J-tube. The problem is the door. In order to do this correctly, you need a good door. And in order to do a good door, I mean, suddenly the door becomes like 70% of the project. So it's like doing the door takes more than double the time to do all the rest of it. And so then you got to buy steel, you got to weld it, you got to, and then even still, it's like really not as good as it could be. The J-tube is so simple and works so well, and you don't need a door. You can just use 2 bricks to put on top of it, and it works great.
All right. And that kind of ties into the next question from Gianni Lapis. Gianni wants to know what's the best way to start a J-style mass stove, and do you have any advice about using it in a greenhouse?
Okay, I think I just did about a bit earlier about starting a J-tube style. And my advice for using one in a greenhouse is that they are awesome in a greenhouse. Please make sure that you send the exhaust outside. And a lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, the exhaust is mostly steam and CO2. Plants like water and CO2. Therefore, what I'm going to do is kill all my plants and kill myself because I don't understand that this much CO2 is different than way too much CO2. And then, of course, a human being walks in there, and there's this odorless gas inside of their greenhouse, and they go, and they die. So we've had way too many people get the idea of like, I'm just going to vent the exhaust into the greenhouse. Don't do that. Vent the exhaust outside. I'm glad we had this.
I am glad that question was asked because that's something I would be trying. Like, ooh, what can I do here? All right. Next question's from Richard.
Work.
What's that?
I said Darwin at work. You were talking about Darwin earlier.
I know. I would have been fatal to, I would have looked it up first. All right. Next question's from Richard Crawford. How big an area would...
But there's somebody over here who's off.
Yeah, your lip sync is way off. Bad internet.
Well, it's not bothering me.
Yeah. We can still hear you. That's what's most important to me anyway.
There you go.
Richard Crawford asked, how big an area would a 10-foot long mass heat? And to expand on that, what is the ratio of length versus area of heating?
Okay. The answer to your question is the same answer as how long is a piece of string. So there's so many variables here. I mean, how cold does it get outside? How big is the building? How well insulated is it? How tall are the ceilings? There's all kinds of other variables in here. And you say 10 foot long, and it's like, well, how wide is the bench? How tall is the bench? What's inside the bench? And then, how did you design the rest of it? Like, how much heat do you have going into the bench? Because we talked earlier about having a design so it put almost no heat into the bench. And so, you can do it both ways. So I think to get good answers to a question like that, I would say you're going to need to spend some time getting cozy with Ernie and Erica's new book. But or I guess you could watch my DVDs. My DVDs don't exactly cover that question, but I do think that you're going to see a lot of different rocket mass heaters put into a lot of different scenarios. So, for example, we've got a pretty big rocket mass heater in a teepee, which is not a really big space, and then we use much smaller rocket mass heaters in much larger spaces. So you kind of get a vague idea of answering that question. And of course, we're in Montana. The teepee is outside and uninsulated. The other spaces are insulated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, makes sense. There's a ton of variables. It is hard to think of building one of these systems, having to experiment, adjust things, rebuild to what your liking is, unlike a regular house wood stove where you're just buying one that you think's big enough for your area. Or they kind of, because when you're buying one in stores, it's telling you, okay, if you got this much insulation, it'll heat this big of an area, like R36 or whatever insulation.
I mean, you could make estimations, you can make rough guesses and stuff like that. Or you could even write down exactly, if your house is 2,500 square feet, just so you need this great big, wood stove to cover that. They could say it, and then it's like, well, it didn't work. And it's like, well, you forgot to tell us that the house wasn't insulated at all, and that you were going to be living in Montana instead of Southern California. So it's like they're going to make charts and stuff, but they're making a lot of assumptions in those charts.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a question from Lance Heidel. Lance asks, is there ash? If so, is it useful like biochar?
Biochar is an amazing thing if you live in the tropics. I have a lot of people who keep, yelling at me and pointing at me and saying hateful things when I say that. But the bottom line is that, there are some uses for charcoal, even though you live in the north, even though you live in a cold climate. But for the most part, they're trying to do, because down in tropical areas, they have a really hard time keeping organic matter in the soil. And so biochar is a great solution to that. But here in a colder climate, it's like, oh, you just take a stick and you bury it, and you're doing better than you did with biochar. And so it's like, why go through all those steps of making biochar? Now, there are people who've done rocket mass heaters that do build biochar. Take a look at what Willie Smits is working on. He's got some amazing stuff. There is ash, of course. And we just scoop the ash out. I'm not finding chunks of charcoal in with the ash when I scoop out the ash.
All right. Next question is from Trent, and it is a bit complicated. So Trent Snyder asks, rather than external air intake, if you had a nearby ground mass heated intake to pull fresh air in, or pressurize the rocket mass heater, thus possibly putting it on par with the wood stove testing houses, would that help with the sealed envelope in many new homes?
Okay. I like I mean, it's kind of funny how a lot of these new homes have a sealed envelope, and now a lot of those exact same homes are being modified, or the newer homes, they are sealed and they have a vent with a fan that will actually like suck the stale. Because what they found is that when they put people in a sealed home, that they get sick, and so now they're trying to vent the homes, and they won't even have an air-to-air heat exchanger. They'll just suck the air out to outside and hope it leaks in from other places. I've even been to places where they've modified a home where they just put holes in the walls on either end of the structure with a grate over it, so air just passes right through. So I think what we've learned is that this sealed home thing is a really bad idea. It does work to hold heat in better when you're heating your home with convective heat, but it makes you sick, and so maybe not so good. So when we're like, to answer this question, it's like, okay, how can I design this so that I can stay being sick? Because I love being sick. It's my favorite thing. And then I want to be able to, like, you know, add a fan somewhere. And so I want to encourage you to have it pull the air out of the room. Whenever you start to look at a rocket mass heater, I've seen people where they add a fan or there, and I'm gonna think, like, we can do this without the fan, and it's better to do it without the fan, to have a passive system, to have a system that doesn't require electricity and it still works great. I understand what he's saying about the heat tube thing, and I think if you're going to put one of those in, something that's going to warm the tube, like earth tubes is what he's describing. It's like, I'd rather see you take the air that comes through that tube and put it into the house than put it into the fire myself. But it is a way. It is a way, and maybe there are things in this space that I still need to learn. But if I had an earth tube like that, like what he's talking about, I think I would use that air to go into the house for my own personal breathing luxury, as opposed to feeding it to the fire.
I would want it in the house too, I think, just so that I would not have to use the RMH as much.
I think that if I had you in my house with me and maybe some other people, and I know you guys have halitosis and BO and all your farting stuff from what you eat and whatnot, I would want that to come into the house, to have fresh air coming in and then suck the air out of the room and into the fire. So that way the nasty air goes out. Especially
if I'm in there. But as far as getting sick, when you have a fever, the temperature is going up by itself. So maybe it's a good thing. Joking.
There you go. Another heat source.
Next question is from Gail. Gail asks, can you use a rocket mass heater to heat a 2-story home, or how would you go about doing that?
Yes. I mean, there are homes that were designed where you had a wood stove on the main floor, and then they had vents on the second floor. I mean, I think we've all been in a home like that at some point, because you can all yell up the stairs, up to the upstairs without having to actually go to the stairs to yell, because they can hear you through that little grate. And that was so that it would allow the heat from below to go up. So that's the old school way of doing that kind of thing. A lot of times the upstairs ends up getting heated when the downstairs is warm, and sometimes closed doors prevent that. And so I think a cool thing about rocket mass heaters is that when you've got a really spread out house or something like that, you could have multiple rocket mass heaters. I do think that you can have a rocket mass heater on the second floor. The thing is, you are going to need to shore up the floor. And that's where it gets complicated. And I mean, so what are you going to do? You're going to rip out the ceiling from downstairs in order to be able to put a few 2x8s or 2x6s in there to kind of help shore up whatever's there already. it gets challenging, and so that would be the thing that's going to stop a lot of people from putting a rocket mass heater in on the second floor.
Well, what this question reminds me of is the old Victorian-style German homes, where these would be like the wealthy Germans. They would have what is a mass stove that runs from the bottom story up to the top story. This is like in the middle of the house. And what would happen is the help that would work on one side of the house, and they're feeding the fire and everything, and that fire is heating the mass, which goes all the way up through the house. And then on the other side is where the help would provide the food to these wealthy people. But everybody was enjoying the heat from the center of the house in this giant brick mass that went all the way through the middle of the house. It's just what I thought of.
Okay.
Next question's from Amber Meyer. Amber asks, do your videos cover rocket mass heat that incorporate water heating or ovens? Is this a feasible option? Amber, we've pretty much covered that, I think. All right. Next question is from Richard Crawford. Richard asks, my current fireplace uses natural gas to help start the wood on fire. Would something like that speed up the process for starting a rocket mass heater? Yes, I know, I am lazy. Sure.
I guess. I mean, I use the propane thing, which is effectively going to be a similar thing, only mine's handheld. I mean, it kind of takes. One of the things that I like about what we have is that it's an autonomous thing. It doesn't require anything external in order to run. And it sounds like you're going to set up something external to make it run.
Next question is from Tim Mather, and the question is, have you tried to have your rocket mass heater with the fire and exhaust outside and the mass components inside the house, thus limiting the issues around code violations and forcing you to start the fire outside?
Well, I don't know about code violation stuff as far as that goes, but I have seen two systems. I have actually lit two systems that do it exactly that way, and I don't like it. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, how's the fire doing? I don't know. It's warm in here and it's cold outside. I don't want to go look. Why don't you go look? Well, I don't want to go look because I'm cozy. And should we add wood? I don't know. So then you got to go outside to go see how the fire's doing. And then, possibly add wood and stuff like that. Maybe. So anyway, I'm just, yeah, you gain something, but I think you lose more.
I think I do. I just don't want to start a fire outside myself.
And there's that.
Yeah. Mason says the German thing I was talking about, he believes it's called a Kackelofen.
Yeah, a Kackelofen. And so when you start talking about masonry heaters, there are some amazing things. Of course, that's going to require some major rework of an existing home. I mean, it's going to be a major remodel. And then building the thing, you're going to have a pretty high level of expertise, and it's going to take you 3 months. Or you can build a rocket mass heater on the first floor and the second floor. Takes 2 days for each one, and not much money. Yeah. And it didn't require a lot of rework. And then for the upstairs, I mean, you could explore doing a small rocket mass heater. I mean, after all, I think your heat needs upstairs are probably going to be less than your heat needs downstairs. So you can probably get away with a real small one.
All right. We are 1 hour into the Q&A. We can keep going if you want, Paul, or we could take these questions offline and post.
I can try do another 15, 20 minutes. How's that?
All right, cool. Because we've still got a lot of questions coming in. Thanks, guys. That's great.
Okay.
Mason, all right, Mason, I'm going to have a hard time with this one, but I'm going to give it a shot. Mason says, what do you wish you knew 10 to 15 years ago? And where do you see permaculture 10 to 15 years in the future?
Oh, man. 10 to 15 years ago,
What's the biggest thing you wish you knew?
the biggest thing I wish I knew. I think rocket mass heaters would be at the top of that list. I mean, when I found out about rocket mass heaters, I found it kind of unbelievable. And then I went and experienced them and saw them firsthand. And my first thought then was, why doesn't everybody know about this already? This is profound. This is amazing and huge, and it changes the world. But okay, so 10 to 15 years ago, what do I wish that I knew then that I know now? I took my first PDC in 2005, so that's 11 years ago. I think it was 15 years ago when I first heard the word permaculture. And so,
The ethics. That's a lot. I mean, there's so much information that has been gained in those 15 years.
Wow. I mean, it's like, okay, so you send a tidbit of information back 15 years. What's the tidbit of information that I sent back? And I am not sure. Now, 10 to 15 years into the future, then I'm hoping that 7 years from now that the things that we started here 3 years ago will be finished. I'm hoping that rather than talking about rocket mass heaters, I'll be talking about WFADIs and annualized thermal inertia. I'm hoping that we'll be talking a lot about how we've cured cancer through polyculture and, you know, a list of 70 other ailments, and thus replacing medications that people require for, you know, like basically I've destroyed 80% of big pharma through just bits of knowledge. So the future I'm very hopeful for. I'm very passionate about discovering the future and what we're going to be able to figure out. But what would I go back in time to do, to try? I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like if I knew a lot of this, I've had this little thought experiment before, and I keep thinking, like, if I didn't go through the suffering that I went through, would I be doing what I'm doing now? If I was a green thumb, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, because I started with gardening. I tried to do a garden, and the garden failed. And then I became absolutely passionate, reading 100 gardening books in one summer. And, you know, I don't want to kill another little baby seedling. and so I learned so much. If I'd had a green thumb when I started, then I probably wouldn't have worked so hard to learn so much. And I think I've met people with green thumbs, and they just kind of have great success without trying. But it's through all the pain that I've gone through that makes it so I think I can explain why it didn't work before and why it works now. And so without that suffering, I don't think I'd be able to convey the message.
Good answer. Yeah, that's a good answer. I think the biggest difference I've found in permaculture, like the thing that impacted me the most, or what I could do to the land, is swales. I think swales is huge. Just because there was just the idea of learning, oh yeah, slow and stop water, duh. I mean, that was huge in a lot of things we do in permaculture, to slow and stop, or stop and slow water. So
okay.
In the future, I just want to see, I mean, I would like the last bastion of slavery, aka government, gone. But that's my personal opinion. Yeah. Next question is from Kyle. Kyle says, in order to get around regulating meanies, can you see a way to build a firebox insulated and outside, and have the mass inside? Okay, that was a double question. We already talked about that.
Okay.
Let's see. Jace McCrown says, has the direct heat off the barrel ever been a problem as far as overheating the room? Any benefit to using that heat to preheat intake air?
Okay. I'm going to skip the second half. I'm going to focus on the first half and say, we've done a lot of experimenting, and we've got here in the Fisher Price house, we have a ceramic fiber shippable core, and it didn't get too hot. It was way too hot, for a lot of different reasons, and so we've done some things to throttle the system down. I mean, it was burning so hard and so rockety, it was sucking the flames off of the wood, and so we couldn't keep the fire going. So it'd get up to heat and then go out because it was just pulling so much air into the system. So we throttled it back in a lot of ways. Now the wood feed is 35% smaller than what it's supposed to be. It's still an 8-inch system. But even now, when you get a fire going good and hot, and you're sitting there on the couch near the barrel, I've had times where it's like, I'm too warm. I'm going away from here. So yeah, that would be an example of too hot. It can get to be too hot.
All right. And next question is kind of similar. It's from Mitchell and says, if you have a double high barrel to output heat into the room, do you still need the bench, or can you do away with the bench?
See, now that's kind of what I was thinking when we were talking about the second floor thing, is we do have one system here that doesn't even have a mass anymore. We've disconnected the mass, and we just have what we call a rocket heater. And it still burns very clean. And so, yeah, if you do that double, and it uses the double barrel to try to extract all the heat. So that way what goes out is like, very cool. So the answer is yes, that is a system, and it works well. We use it.
All right, I've gotten this question multiple times, so I'm going to ask it. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, but they want more details. Sauna. Okay. How does rocket mass heater work in a sauna? What can you do with that?
I would say, first of all, I would say a rocket mass heater probably isn't a good idea, but a rocket heater, like we were just talking about, is probably a better idea. Because in a sauna, you don't really need it to stay warm for days. You need it to just heat up right now, and then you do your sauna thing, and then you're all done. And then the building sits empty for a week or something like that. So I would say that would be one component, to not have a mass. Then the next thing is that you just need a place where you could dribble water on something hot, and that would be the top of the barrel. The end. I think that's it.
So now we're looking more at rocket heater. Do a rocket heater.
Rocket heater, yeah, without the mass.
Next question is from Carolyn Graves. Carolyn asks, is it better to have your exhaust go straight up through the roof, or is it okay to have it go up and out of a wall?
That is an excellent question. And we go into excruciating detail in DVD 2 on that topic. But in a nutshell, when we built the 3 rocket mass heaters the first year we were here at base camp, we built one in the shop, one in the office, and one in the Fisher Price house. We made them all go out the wall, except for the one in the office. We had it set up so you could choose to go out the wall or out the roof. And we know Ernie and Erica demanded that we make them all go out through the roof. And I'm the one that insisted they go out the wall. Because it's a problem. Going out the wall has never been as good as going out the roof. And we thought if we can force the problem to exist, we'll come up with a solution, because a lot of people want to go out the wall. They do not want to go out the roof. The end result is that we've never been able to solve the problem. Maybe somebody else will later. And so going out the wall low sucks. Going out the roof is best. And if you need to go out the wall high, that's like in the middle. It's going to be okay-ish. One thing I'd like to emphasize, as long as we're having that chat, one thing we've learned is have your vertical exhaust really close to the barrel to have it be more rocky. It'll make your rocket mass heater less efficient, but it will work much better, especially with Gilligans. So if people are like, they don't really know what they're doing, but they want to help, and they're trying and failing. It'll be fail light instead of fail major.
Yeah.
The system will be more forgiving.
All right. Someone had a question about the black thing behind me. It's got to be there. Sorry, guys. There's a big light there, so you'd be very annoyed if it wasn't there. And then we had some permaculture questions, but I'm going to try and keep this to the rocket mass stuff, guys. So the next question I have is from Amber, and Amber says, if I wanted to heat 2 or 3 bedrooms with 1 rocket mass heater, how would that work? Is there a limit to the length of exit?
There. Okay, I feel like I'm just trying to sell everybody on my DVDs, but on DVD 4, I made a special animation that shows what I call a stratification chamber, and it really opens things up so you can do all kinds of interesting shapes, and suddenly the length of duct no longer matters. And so it's a way that we haven't done a lot of, but we've done some with. And so this stratification chamber. Now, the Fisher-Price house is a 3-bedroom house, and the rocket mass heater is centrally located. We close the doors at night, and of course, like with any kind of wood stove, if you close the door, you're no longer getting heat from your wood stove. And so some people will keep their doors open at night to be able to get the heat. Now, of course, there are houses such as this one that have like another heat source in it that includes a fan, and you can turn on just the fan and it'll circulate the heat throughout the entire house. That's an option. But we leave the fan off generally, and the only time we've ever turned the fan on is when it gets really cold outside, and we want to make sure that like pipes don't break on the extremities of the structure. So then we'll turn the fan on. I would say that the thing I would stick to is the whole concept of the central rocket mass heater gets warm, and then it's going to hold heat, and you close your bedroom door, and now when you wake up in the morning in your bedroom, it's 50 instead of 70. And the way that you warm your bedroom up is to open the door. Now, that said, the other thing is that I have seen systems where they would have bedrooms that were far away from the central heat source, kind of like more of a ranch-style home. And then what they do is they put more rocket mass heaters throughout. Like, you might have 4 or 5 rocket mass heaters throughout the entire house. And then, if you want to heat this room, you're going to put a fire in it. But you don't, the ones on the extremities tend to be really tiny rocket mass heaters, and the one that's in the middle of the house will be the big one.
Awesome. All right. Good. We got 2 people with the same question. So Carolyn asks, can I buy a shippable core yet? And then Mike asks, are you familiar with the Liberator RMH shippable core that is UL listed?
Oh, that guy. So he's an advertiser on Permies, I think. So there is somebody, there's a shippable core that is the one that's the Liberator, I believe, and it's advertised on Permies.com. And I gotta say that I've only glanced at it, and I have some concerns about it because it looks like a lot of steel, and I'm trying to dissuade the use of so much steel. But it's going to, in order for it to get UL listed, it is going to have to be something that's going to be a solid piece like that, all steel, something to be duplicated, because masonry stuff generally cannot survive the shipping to be UL listed. Now, I do think that I like the idea that someday there's going to be a shippable core that's going to be ceramic. Now, the other thing is that DVD number 3 in the new DVD set is all about shippable cores. I think we've got I don't know, like 8 to 10 shippable cores in that one DVD. So we've got pourable cores, we've got ceramic fiber cores, we've got wood box style core. So we talk about, lots of different styles of making cores that are shippable cores. I'm hoping that someday somebody will create a business that's going to be the ceramic fiber shippable cores. I do know that there is a manufacturer out there of a shippable core, or they claim it's a shippable core, and I have a lot of problems with that particular one. We addressed it a little bit in DVD 3. The ones that are steel, I would want to go for a tour of it. For a 4-inch system, to have a little bit of steel in the wood feed feedback has been like not that big of a deal. When we've tried to use steel on an 8-inch system, it was a problem. There are further ways to mitigate these things, and I would want to see the system. I want to tour it. When I'm asked, I would like to. I'd like to see somebody. In fact, when making DVD 3, part of the things we thought is that somebody's going to go and start a business building these styles. There's the ceramic fiber stuff, which has been proving out to be really amazing. And then there's also some designs with DuraBoard where I think that it'll have all of the upsides of the ceramic fiber stuff, but the binder on the outside will combine to make a poured manifold, which I think a good shippable core will include a manifold, but I'm seeing a lot of shippable cores out there that don't have a manifold. I think that there's something that you can do on the perlite and Portland cement with a ceramic fiber core, because the perlite and Portland cement is extremely lightweight. It's incredibly, bizarrely lightweight. And then if you've got this DuraBoard on the inside, then that will protect because the Portland cement spalls at 600 degrees, which is a very low temperature. But the DuraBoard, you can have a 3,000 degree fire in it, and you can touch the outside of it. So we're talking about like 120 degrees or 110 degrees on the outside, well within the range of what Portland cement can tolerate. I'd like to see some of these exist and some of these businesses take off. So in the meantime, I don't know. I plug my stuff, buy my DVDs. But I think that the solution to the world's problems is going to be to have a really high quality shippable core, and for $500 to your door for $500. And right now I'm seeing shippable cores that are like in the $1,200 to $1,800 range. I'm not sure how much the one with the steel is. I haven't looked into it. The moment I saw lots and lots of steel, I thought, I know why they did that. Is to get the UL listing, and that's away. But I haven't looked at it close enough. Whenever I see steel in a wood feed, I kind of think, that's going to be problematic. And I hope they didn't use steel. Because when we go and we look on YouTube, you'll find a lot of people welding up rocket mass heaters. And they got steel on the inside. And they absolutely insist it's fine. And but it's like, I'll bet you that you get a month down the road, it won't be fine anymore. And first steel is going to spall. Even if if it's a 4-inch system and the temperature inside never gets above 1,800 degrees and steel melts at 2,600, it spalls at about 1,500 to 1,600 degrees. And that's where it kind of turns gray and flakes off. I don't know if you've ever seen this in steel. So it's like, it doesn't last. So I feel like I have not given a good, solid, clear answer. I've given kind of a mealy-mouthed answer. And I guess the answer is that it's kind of complicated right now. There are shippable cores, and I would like to see a different style of shippable core. And I
think it falls into the question earlier about what do we see in the future in 10 to 15 years for permaculture. And I think this is one example, is that we'll see a lot more permaculture products come to market, like these shippable cores. There'll be a lot more competition within the marketplace, reducing cost and coming up with all kinds of crazy new ideas. And that's one great thing about permaculture, is there's so many ways to do things. I think a lot of great products are going to come out of it.
I think we have huge room for optimization. I mean, we're just getting started. And I could go on for 15 hours on this topic of where we might see optimization. And it does fit into that question of, like, what do you want to see in 15 years? But in the world of rocket mass heaters, yeah, I'd love to see some shippable cores that are of the style that I like out there in like a year or two. And I encourage people to look at DVD 3 and take all those ideas. We hereby release them to the public, release the ideas to the public domain. Don't pirate my DVD. But, you know, the ideas, yeah, use those.
Yeah, use them. Make products out of it.
Last question. I'm running out of steam here.
All right, yeah. There's only 6 left. Let's go with... all right. This one's specific to something someone's trying to do, so I think that's going to be the best question to do.
Okay, all right.
Dick Law asks, I have several lengths of handmade ceramic pipe, 2-inch thick, 4 foot tall, 12-inch interior diameter. I'm contemplating using one in place of the barrel and perhaps a second length ahead of the manifold and exhaust cord. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so it's 2 inches thick and it's ceramic. So ceramic is clay, solid clay. 2 inches thick? Is that what it says? 2 inches thick?
2-inch thick. It's 4 foot tall. Plus it's got a 12-inch interior diameter. 12 inches wide, 2 inches thick, 4 foot tall.
That's got to be crazy heavy. And he's thinking about replacing the barrel with this.
And then using a second length of that ahead of the manifold and exhaust course.
Ahead of the manifold. Okay. I think that using that stuff to go into the bench could be smart. Ahead of the manifold would be like basically replacing the barrel. And I don't think it's going to conduct heat fast enough to be good, because like when the heat hits the top of the barrel, it needs to, expel the heat quickly, and that cools those gases so that they get pushed down. And so it kind of sounds like I'm just guessing. I don't know what the conductivity is of ceramic material, but I don't think it's like incredibly high. So like if you have a ceramic mug and you pour hot coffee into it, how long until the mug is too hot? Now, if it's a steel mug, it'll be about 1 second, and then you're like dropping it. Damn! But with a ceramic mug, it's going to take it a minute, maybe half a minute to a minute. And they're like, oh, it's getting warm. I'm going to set it down and use the handle. So I'm kind of thinking that ceramic isn't going to be very conductive, which will be a problem. Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, I mean, you can experiment in your backyard, try it out, see what happens. Maybe it'll be cool. I just kind of think it probably won't work really well.
I think that was an awesome question, Dick. Thank you very much. And great answer, Paul.
The name is funny. I wonder if his name is made up.
I think it's Richard Law, Dick Law.
There's a law about your dick.
Oh, gosh. I hope it doesn't come to that. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Paul. What an awesome show. I hope to have this show out tomorrow. tv.permaethos.com. That's where you can find the recording. Permies.com. For those that we didn't get to your question, head over to Permies.com. There's a rocket mass heater forum, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that would be more than willing and happy to answer these questions you guys have. Thank you again, Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
Any last thing you want to plug or share with everybody?
Buy my things. Come to my website. It's free.
I would like to plug, if you guys want to make some money in permaculture, Paul has some awesome affiliate programs. You can check out the affiliate program at richsoil.com, and he gives a lot of money back to you guys for just sharing this information that you watched today. So definitely check that out. Make some money. That's a great way to make some money, just sharing this information with friends and family, which you'll probably already share already. So if you're sharing something already, why not make some money off of it? Thanks again, guys. This has been a great episode. Have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Next Tuesday. Bye.